All right, hi everybody. Welcome to episode 18, right? 17, 18? Doesn't matter.
18.
I'm Jeff. That's Paul. Visiting again is our buddy John the lawyer. We had a couple things we want to get into today. Besides like the like and share thing, stop pretending that you don't watch our show or pretend to watch our show. And since we're about to get into, we're going to start with the pagers, the pager bombing in uh, against Hezbollah, right? So what
Sure.
I thought was crafty about it is that the Israelis intercepted the package of pagers. This is what I heard so far today, and intercepted the package, put the bombs in them, let the package go through, and then waited a hot minute until everybody got them, and then blew them up. I saw 12 people killed, a bunch of injuries because of proximity to where people were. So just as the gangster move, that's pretty fucking gangster. Similar to when they killed the the peace rep from Gaza in Iran because they knew where he stayed and they planned the bomb 2 months early. Remember that, like 2 months ago, whatever. So they've shown that they have one excellent intelligence, and they have the patience to wait your ass out and plan plan 2 months ahead, which is, besides the whole terrible thing of war, it's just as a war history buff, I guess it's kind of the move. Not on no Sunday, but what do you think, John?
Yes, the Mossad knows what they're doing, and it's pretty incredible logistics. But I mean, I gotta say, like, I'm generally in favor between the two of the Israeli government over Hamas and a lot of things that Hezbollah do. But this is straight up. I mean, this is straight up a violation of international law. I mean, you can't. I mean, there were 2 children killed, people injured. They're blowing up in markets around random. I mean, the Geneva Convention says you're not allowed to just randomly plant weapons and devices that kill civilians. That's why landmines are illegal, right?
Right.
I think it's pretty messed up. I mean, it's smart if you're going with the kind of dystopian. They're good at killing people, smart, but I'm not in favor of it. And I
No.
am. I'm not suggesting that the other side wouldn't do the same thing if they had the wherewithal to do it, if not worse. But I mean, no, I'm not in favor of creating a new norm where Russia or China decides to. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
imagine China decided to put bombs in the random next shipment of iPhones, and there's 50,000 iPhones in the United States that bombs us. I mean, that's just not okay.
That'd be
I think
enough to piss off everybody. What we also forgot to mention is that this also didn't happen in Gaza. This happened in Lebanon, right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So now you're doing an assassination on a whole bunch of targets and not caring about casualties in a new war zone. So not only are you attacking your enemies, but again trying to escalate the situation with the hope of bringing the U.S. more involved than we already not are involved.
Yeah, that's probably a large part of it. I think the other part of it, though, is we would be naive to not suggest that Hezbollah has not been firing, thousands of into Israel. I mean, it's not like this is just a random, Egypt non-combatant zone. But no, I mean, it's not okay. And I think I think Israel did not want to start bombing and putting troops on the ground in another country, and they found another way to make Hezbollah scared to contact anyone, and that's kind of the goal right now. I just don't like the precedent it sets. I think that's terrible. I think that it's a terrible. I mean, I didn't even know you could do that. Now everyone in the world knows you can do that. That's awful, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, now that the terrorists know that that's a possibility, they have to change up their tactics. It's like when drug dealers found out you get bugs on your cell phone, they started getting burners. And when they stopped using burners, they started using pagers or payphones or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I find all of this highly disturbing.
Right. I mean, I'm just worried.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, I'm just worried, like I said, that some random person's going to order 500 iPhones and then trade them in like you can when your iPhone is used and sell them back for money and no one checks it. And now that's the next Unabomber or the next like
Oh,
Sinai
good
and
point.
Aspirin. Isn't it the same thing?
Yeah, I thought you brought up a good point too, where again, this is like, so they don't really have any idea who is around these people when these bombs detonate. Like you guys mentioned, apparently there were 2 children that were either injured or killed. So again, like this is a whole different level of terrorist activity, if you ask me. Because again, if you don't know who's standing around these people and you detonate a bomb, you have no idea who you're, implicating in the destruction here. And many of them could be children, could be completely innocent. And I do have a clip
Yeah,
I
well,
want to play. Just about a minute
Go
of
ahead,
it.
play.
Let me just share it with you guys and then get some further
All right.
thoughts if you guys have any on this.
Well, like we showed last week, the game war is changing, obviously, with technology. Like we showed the video last week of the 2 guys trying to fight a drone,
Yeah.
and the Russian threw his gun at it and hit the drone, and they probably would have gotten blown up.
Yeah, the
Right.
future of warfare. Scary stuff. All right, let me play it. I'm going to cut it after about a minute.
All right. What's this redacted?
Oh, DTD.
We wanted to ask former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter for his assessment on all of this and who's been watching this very, very closely. Scott, first, just your reaction to this developing story.
Well, what did Hezbollah think was going to happen? I mean, we're in a situation where Hezbollah and Israel are in a war. We can call it a proxy war. We call it a hybrid war, whatever you want to call it. It's a conflict. Israel carried out an attack earlier this summer against a senior Hezbollah official in Beirut. Hezbollah responded by attacking Unit 8200, Israel's top secret signal intelligence unit, electronic warfare unit, cyber unit. According to news reports, they may have killed the commander of this unit and killed up to 26 others, wounded over 70 others. This attack against the pagers of these Hezbollah officials is an attack carried out by Unit 8200. That's the unit that does this. What did Hezbollah think was going to happen?
Just wanted to add a little extra context. I didn't know about Unit 8200 or any of that stuff. If what this guy's saying is accurate.
So can I tell you a crazy story that sounds too ridiculous to be true? So I was a debater at the University of Rochester, and I did that from 1999 until 2003. And in 2000, my debate coach, I was debating the British national team in a parliamentary debate, and they came to Rochester, whatever. So the guy who came to judge was a gentleman who was high up in the Bush White House and was kind of thrown out unceremoniously about the weapons of mass destruction stuff in Iraq. That was Scott Ritter. I sat across the table at a Thai restaurant with Scott Ritter. It was either 2000 or 2001. I remember it was before or after 9/11, where he explained to me how they basically fabricated the basement chemical weapons and nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to get them to go to war, and kicked him out of the White House after that happened because of that. And so it was bizarre that you just showed that clip because he looks the same. I mean, me and him are both probably a little heavier than we were, but just a bizarre moment right there. And he looks exactly the same, but no, he's kind of a well-known whistleblower who got unceremoniously kicked out of his government positions for exposing some of that stuff. But he's not wrong. I mean, you mess with the bull, you get the horns. I mean, if you mess with the Secret Service, the CIA, they're going to get you.
They got him. They got him back.
Absolutely, 100% true. Just so you know.
They got him back. Did you see what happened to him after he left the White House? He's got. I'm not sure.
I talked to him.
I'm not sure when the charges were filed, but he's got something about a minor somewhere.
Oh,
They always go there.
well,
Maybe it's true.
right,
Maybe
right.
it's not.
He denies it. I don't think he actually got. I don't know. He got like a minor, whatever. But you know how they
apparently
are.
he's my.
Well, I think it was Tucker Carlson, right? Recently,
Yeah,
like
all I know is that it must have been after 9/11. Remember, he was really upset about it and what had happened, and that he was right. and that he had been there in Iraq. He was part of like the group that like inspected or whatever, the UN inspections or whatever. I don't remember what it was. It's just bizarre to see him on the screen because I haven't thought about him in a long time.
That's kind of funny that we just, brought a video of him when you were on the show.
Bizarre.
2009.
But Tucker was just
Well-
saying something about that recently in one of his interviews. I forgot who he was talking to, but he was talking about like if you cross these people, one of the things that they like to do is insert child porn on your computer. And that's how they get you, even if you never Googled it, even if you've never, even if you're not a P. Yeah, that's how they like to apparently come at you.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I just remember thinking the guy was he clearly had an axe to grind, but he was very intelligent. He was very well spoken, and I was a dumb college kid, so I was just kind of excited to be talking to someone who had that kind of clout.
I still listen to him from time to time. His geopolitical information isn't bad. He's very pro Ukraine. Like he goes over there and he's got pictures and stuff with him. But there's a couple other guys I watch that now I can't remember. Older general dudes who have podcasts. He goes on with them. He's pretty good information wise, but he's got his pros and biases.
You guys both
He
know
likes-
more about this guy than I do.
I was
I
gonna say
like
like
him.
Thai green curry. That's all I can tell you. That's what he ate. Had it
Yeah,
before.
I forget the deep cover or deep dive is one that's every day. Like Douglas is his last name or his first name. There's two of them, two political science guys that I watch besides Mersheimer. All right, so anything else you want? Oh, show the video, Paul.
Which video? Oh,
The video, yes, the chick in the SUV. So I saw this the other day, and I was going to try to find more videos. So one of the problems they're having in cities, because it happens around here, is they're not even street racers, they're like drifters. They'll like block off a major intersection, and the kids are hanging out the windows, and people are getting close, and they're just drifting around and tearing up their tires and shit.
Check your heart and your brain, man. I think you niggas need to get up on some game, man. Pick up in your heart, and I'm shot by your daddy. All I want is the money, so I'm all about my
And the people are getting run over and hit. I mean, it's funny. It's crazy. I'd probably be pissed off if I lived close enough that it would bother me. It's illegal. But this reminded me of that. But this is way worse. This is just how crazy people are.
it's sensitive content for some viewers. I know you don't care,
Put a
Jeffrey,
disclaimer up in the beginning of
but
the show.
some
No one
people
cares.
might care. Just fair warning.
It's not as bad as the assassination I showed 2 weeks ago.
No, it's probably not the worst thing that we've shown on the show.
Right?
Yeah.
They got her, obviously.
I'm just gonna mute
I
it.
looked the next day.
That's straight up second-degree murder. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there's clearly at least two people that I see that are still on the ground that are obviously injured from that.
Oh yeah, man. That shit's crazy.
there's really no defense to that unless you're getting like literally shot at with a gun while you're
No.
driving.
She wasn't.
What was the
Yeah,
do we know
that's
what
easily-
what the motivation was for that? Was it just words or
I don't know.
Was she?
I guess it's not really important. Obviously this person decided
They caught her. I didn't look into it besides the fact that they caught her.
Yeah, that's an easy secondary murder charge. I mean, especially if she's drunk, but even if she isn't, it's almost probably better for her if she is drunk, frankly, in terms of the charges, because there's no way you can say you don't know you're likely to kill someone and you drive over them.
with a
So-
5,000-pound machine or whatever however much that
Right.
car weighs.
Yeah, so
It's like-
unless one of them pulled a pistol on her or something like that, she has no argument.
Yeah, now if someone pulled a pistol on her and they're about to shoot her and she's driving away, she has some mitigating factors. But I mean, generally, it's like dropping a piece of concrete off an overpass. I mean, what do you expect to happen?
Right.
Yeah.
There was during the George Floyd riots, there was the one incident where the truck was towing horses, and the people started banging on the truck and banging on like the big ass horse trailer,
Mhm.
and he gunned it through.
I mean, that's a little different.
Oh yeah,
I think at that point you have some defense. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that lies. I think that that's a jury, decision there. But yeah, I mean that's a lot more understandable. Or the people, we saw what happened. We're all kind of older people. We saw what happened to, and I forgot his name, the gentleman in the Rodney King riots who got beat almost to death. I can't think of his name. It's not Abner Diallo. That was
Governor Reginald or something.
yes, Reginald
Reginald
Denny.
Denny.
Beat almost to death by being pulled out of the car. I mean, I understand why people are legitimately frightened if there's a large crowd and people banging on your car and trying to pull you out and they drive through the crowd. I think that's a lot more defensible. I mean, but this woman was clearly nothing like that going on. I mean, she clearly is just driving through traffic, which is just not okay, obviously.
Well, there's probably like a line somewhere for that, right? Like I could imagine like being in a car surrounded by people trying to drag me out, banging on the car. But I think it's one thing to try to excel. I totally blame them or don't blame them for trying to exit that environment immediately. But going from 0 to 60 isn't the same as doing 5 or 10 miles, an hour just to get through the crowd and try to not hurt anybody in the process.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're getting almost dragged out of a car and you accelerate forward at 10 to 15 miles an hour, it's going to get almost anyone out of the way of your car versus you gun it and go 75 miles an hour. Yeah, there's definitely a different argument there. So there's a defense in the law called the defense of necessity, which is often used, for example, when hostage victims are forced to do horrible things. It was the defense that was used unsuccessfully, ironically, in the Patty Hearst case. When she robbed the bank, when she had been kidnapped and everything else. So there is a defense of necessity that you can use in these cases. You just got to prove that the thing that you're avoiding is more serious than the thing that you're committing, essentially. Like it's okay to rob a bank if someone's going to shoot you in the head or shoot your wife in the head. It's
Gotcha.
not okay or kill someone if they say they're going to steal your car, right? Like that's kind of how it works.
Okay.
Sounds kind of like if you guys have ever seen the movie Saw, kind of like something like that, where maybe these people are put in situations where they don't want to do something, but their families' lives are at stake, or yeah.
Yeah, it's true defense in the law. But no, I don't know what that one was thinking, but yeah, that's kind of horrific, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It is possible that maybe somebody in that crowd did pull a gun on her or something, but it's hard to
Or
tell
someone-
from the video.
Oh, we know maybe someone in the passenger seat was saying, get out of here, or I'll shoot you in the head. I mean, and
Right.
if that's the case, it's totally different. But
Yeah, that's true.
All right, John, tell me about Travelers, because all I ever really know is from time to time you watch Cops or a YouTube video of a stop, and it's like, I'm a traveler, and the cop's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't care about your paperwork, and it's always like a thing.
yeah, so this is kind of hilarious because we see it all the time, and we see it in court a lot. And they always have their own little flags, which is hilarious because you're not supposed to believe in flags. So the sovereign citizen movement kind of grew out of the 1960s counterculture movement after the Vietnam War, but it's very hard to follow. So everything I'm going to tell you is the fractured arguments used by sovereign citizens that make literally no sense. So there's three main versions, okay? The first version is after the Civil War, the country that conquered was no longer the United States. It was now the Northern, Republic, which became the United States. So my obligation to those laws doesn't exist because it's not that country anymore. Okay, that's
Okay.
kind of the old school. You don't see more version.
I can
The
see that.
second version, which you see the most, the second version, which you see the most, is the traveler argument, which is, and follow me here, when the United States went off of the gold standard, they became backed by their citizens. And so their citizens became commodities. And so once their citizens became commodities, they became part of the government and part of the nation, and they got to control the nation. So if they don't assign themselves to a location and they travel, that shows that they are no longer bound by the laws. And it's proven by the fact that all of the documents, birth certificates, licenses, etc., use capital letters, because that's not the true letters that would be used in the English language. They're all pseudonyms for people, which is why they won't show their IDs. And so they're sovereign citizens of the location that they travel, because they are part of what makes our country, because they're part of the non-gold standard. If you can follow that, you're doing better than I am. But that's the second argument for sovereign citizens. The third argument is actually even harder to follow, which is once the United States no longer became the United States through the Civil War, we defaulted to an admiralty jurisdiction, because we essentially became like an open sea, like we're an unclaimed land. And so when admiralty law applies, anything traveling through the open seas or the open waters is subject to their own laws, kind of like a pirate. Like the reason why when you go 10 miles off the coast, the law of the sea applies, and any independent entity in those seas can create their own laws. Now, to be fair, none of these things make any legal sense whatsoever. And the person you're asking at any given time will give any combination thereof. And I'll actually send you a really interesting book if you guys are interested in it, because my law partner is defending a first-degree murder case where the guy's defense is that he's a sovereign citizen, which not going to go real well for him, FYI. But he gave us the book, which is like the original book that someone wrote about being a sovereign citizen and like why you are a sovereign citizen. And it is the most entertaining and hard to follow thing I've ever read in my life. But I can send it to you. But that's the idea of a sovereign citizen, is that no nation can impose their will on you. Now, ironically, the sovereign citizens say things like, it's unconstitutional for you to impose your will on me. And then Judge Cleland, who would have a really fun conversation with you about this, would be like, well, why does it matter if it's constitutional? You don't believe in the Constitution.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Right. And then they're like, and it's like, he's like, tell me why I can't just tell these police officers, like, you're a sovereign citizen and I am too, right? And then they're like, yeah. He's like, tell me why I can't have these two people with guns take you in the back and shoot you. And they're like, well, there's laws. It's like, well, hold on. I thought you said there weren't laws. Like, I thought you said you weren't subject to those laws. So it's an impossible argument to make. And most people who make it are, mentally ill or sort of have issues. But it's problematic because it takes a long time and they appeal everything and they lose. And there's case law I can send you in North Carolina about sovereign citizens who have appealed all the way to the North Carolina Supreme Court, which will help you understand their arguments a little bit. But that's my very basic primer on what it means to be a traveler or a sovereign citizen.
Were you ever a prosecutor?
I was not. I was asked to be a prosecutor out of law school, and I thought about it. And the guy who tried to hire me is actually a judge now. But frankly, our horrible student loan economic model meant that was not a feasible career path for me.
I feel you.
I think I would have enjoyed it to some degree. I don't think I would have enjoyed everything about it, and I'm glad I did what I did. But now I have privately prosecuted some cases, because if you have a civil case that's connected to a criminal case, and you go into the DA's office and you're like, hey, can I privately prosecute this? They'll commission you to prosecute a case or two. So I've prosecuted a couple of cases.
Okay.
Privately, but never as an attorney.
Yeah, I like you give a good version of both arguments when you're explaining it. So I was wondering if you had the experience of busting ass and figuring out how to, in the private side, how to get out of it.
I have a
you
spin-off question when you guys are done. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You kind of have to. I was just saying to know how to argue any legal argument, you got to know both sides.
You got to know both sides. Yeah, I appreciate that. What's up, Paul?
So you were talking before, about maritime law, right? Which is when you're 10 miles off the coast or whatever, and now you're in international waters, right? So if you're on a ship, right? And again, say you're an American citizen, you're on a ship, you push somebody off in the middle of the ocean, you're obviously in, maritime, and they die. How does that work? Do they try you in a U.S. court of law, even though you technically weren't on U.S. Territory? What? How does?
So
I'm confused with that. Go ahead.
Where's the body wash up?
that's a
Does that
super
matter?
complicated answer. I'll give you the most simple answer I can give you, because I was one of the dorks, because I like this professor that I took admiralty law in law school. So the answer is, whenever you have a conflict of law, the choice of law are what decides what law you use, right? So everyone knows anywhere it's not okay to murder someone by throwing them over a ship, right? So let's say I'm in, the Bermuda Triangle, right? Like no one technically owns it. There's international treaties that say we look at the citizenship of the ship and the port of call and the citizenship of the people involved, and anyone can lay claim to that crime. So let's give you a better example. Let's say I am almost to Bermuda, so I'm in Great Britain's territory, because I think they still own Bermuda. So I'm in England's territory. England can decide to prosecute me, but England's going to say, well, everybody's American, right? All the evidence is in America. The reason he probably did this is because someone's cheating with someone's wife in the United States. We're going to decline, and then the United States can prosecute this. So that's kind of how it works. Unless, and no one's usually dying to be the one prosecuting things. The exception being things like what happened with Snowden and what happened with some of the, quote unquote terrorist actors or the WikiLeaks and all that stuff. Then sometimes people try and fight over whose right it is to prosecute it.
Yeah. John, did you ever see The Wire season 2?
I've seen all of them. I love The Wire.
Okay, so in The Wire season 2, one of my favorite scenes, there's 2 scenes, is when Rawls is sticking the body on somebody else, and then McNulty does the timetable and figures out that they killed him in Baltimore territory. And I just like Rawls. He's like, "No, sir."
This is bullshit.
Those computations were checked and confirmed by the medical examiner's office. They're accurate for time of death to within a 3-hour window.
So you say.
Your own man in the City Marine unit did the measurements on the container.
I happen to know my man in the Marine unit intimately, and he's without a doubt the most swollen asshole in American law enforcement. I am not eating 13 murders. No, sir.
And that is a great part. That the whole show is amazing, frankly. But no, I mean, like, it's not so much of a big deal for the feds, because a little known fact that most people don't understand: the federal government can charge you with exactly the same crime that a state government charges you with, even if you've been convicted. There's no such thing as double jeopardy between federal and state levels. Like, you can be convicted of murder in North Carolina and murder in the federal government. You can be acquitted of murder in North Carolina, and if you meet the definition, they can charge you with murder in the federal government. So, like, they don't care. They'll wait their turn. And usually what happens is the state government just defers to the feds. Like, we had a client, Bendit, who was charged with like some significant but not huge like meth crimes, and then the feds decided to charge him with trafficking methamphetamine, like huge quantities, like 150 kilos, right? And so the state government just said, we're not going to prosecute because he's screwed and he's going to jail forever in federal court. They could have, but they just like, we're not going to waste our resources, just let him go. And that happens a lot. If you're charged with a lesser crime in state court and you get indicted in federal court, they'll usually dismiss the charges. So
Okay.
So that's the answer to your question. If you're in a boat, it depends on who wants it more.
All right. Now, what if say it's not murder? What if it's drug trafficking? Like speedboats from Cuba with kilos of VAO for Miami.
That's different. Because in my example, the first time, the crime was illegal in every jurisdiction where anyone could prosecute. It is, if it's not illegal to do where you are, it's just not illegal. It's the reason why when I was 16 years old and we got 5 miles off the coast on the cruise to Bermuda, I could gamble, even though it's illegal in everywhere in the United States, or I could drink in Canada at 19 on the border, right? Because where you are is where it's legal or illegal. So in that sense, no, if it's not illegal to do it there, it's just not illegal. Now, it's not too hard to, make it illegal depending on bringing it back and everything else. But no, Like if it's not illegal to, sell methamphetamine in Egypt and you're in Egypt, they can't charge you in the United States.
Okay.
By the way, anybody listening, please don't push anybody off a boat or kill anybody. Thank you.
Please don't. No,
Please don't do that.
They'll always, just so you know, the police are really good at catching murderers. You pretty much don't get away with it.
Just don't do it. Maybe that's what I would go with.
Because what percentage of murder is done by somebody you know?
Like 96%.
Okay.
Either when no, that's not true. It's like of non-gang related or drug related murder. So you got to take those out.
Jay, let me talk to you for a second, man. Come here. Let me talk to you.
Because gang and drug related murder is significant and they don't always know each other. But of like what we think is murder, not like just random shootings, drive-bys, gang violence, like 96% is someone you know.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I figured.
Very little murder as strangers or serial killers. I mean, it happens, but very, very rarely.
Well, it's good to know. Because the way they show this shit on Netflix, you'd think that they're in every town got a cult or a serial killer going on somewhere.
I think that's part of
the average is there's 20 at large in the country anytime, but there's a lot of people in the country. So
I think that's also based because people find serial killers interesting from a psychological perspective, which is why their shows are so popular and movies, like The Silence of the Lambs, for example.
Mm-hmm. And they are. I mean, they are really interesting.
I find them interesting.
If I was ever to go into any sort of psychological field, because it's a big part of what we do as lawyers is psychology, I would definitely want to go into criminal or deviant psychology. I think it's fascinating.
It is. I think where we go wrong is when people start like almost glorifying it. Like you had that show called You, right? Where apparently the main character is like a serial killer, and I saw like people tweeting and stuff like, "Oh my god, I got a crush on this dude," and it's like, what?
Wasn't Dexter like that too?
Could be. I never saw it. But...
Dexter.
I loved Dexter. Yeah. You're right. But Dexter was pretty good about being like, I'm still a bad person. Like that was kind of a big part of the show is that like I was taught to kill bad guys because he kills other serial killers in Dexter. He doesn't kill regular. But he was like, it was very clear a lot of times in the show, like, I'm still a bad guy. I'm still sick. I'll tell you the one that disturbed me more than anything. Did you watch the Dahmer miniseries?
No. That
really disturbed me because everybody loved the guy who played Jeffrey Dahmer. And like, they literally they took the whole stories of all the victims and like put them out there. And I just imagine being like, the family of one of these people. And he got a lot of criticism because they kind of romanticized Dahmer, that he was just kind of a drunk gay guy who wasn't okay with being gay and he didn't want to do this. And it's like, dude, he killed like 13 people.
He put people's body parts in the refrigerator. Like, come on,
Yeah. Like, he tried to lobotomize a guy by drilling into his head and pouring muriatic acid in it. Like,
and that guy got away, I think, right? Yeah. Didn't he get away?
No, that guy died.
Oh, he died.
No, that was another guy.
I didn't follow. I know nothing about Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, didn't he escape? I think the guy who got drilled in the head, I think he escaped and people found, but the cops, for whatever reason, allowed Jeffrey to take him back into his house. And then
you're 100%. You're 100% correct. In fact, he drilled multiple people's head. The one I was talking about, he killed with a dumbbell eventually. But the guy you're talking about, he did drill into his head, and he was 14 years old, by the way.
Yep.
And he runaway 14 or 15. He was a runaway Filipino homosexual boy. And he ran out bleeding and naked. And the cops got there and he was so out of it because he'd been drugged and had his head drilled. And Jeffrey Dahmer told him it was a lover's quarrel. And he let him take him back into the apartment and he killed him that night. So yeah, it was bad.
It's wild, yeah. So yeah, I think that's my problem with this stuff is it's cool for you to totally be interested in it. Like I'm fascinated by psychology, so I have an interest in serial killers and criminal minds. But I don't glorify it. I don't romanticize it. Jeffrey Dahmer was not a cool person. He's not somebody that I want to go grab a beer with, Same thing with
No,
Hannibal Lecter. You know, go ahead.
No, he's a monster. I mean, they
Monster.
all are.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if I can plug a not as good as yours podcast, but one that's very, very
Thanks.
popular. The last podcast on the left, they do a really good job talking about all these serial killers, and they always talk about how they're monsters. Like we don't want to pretend these people are cool. Like they're terrible. They're monsters. They don't like. It's not okay that they exist, but it is interesting to understand them to sort of figure out how to avoid them. And it's a lot. You want conspiracy theories? There's like a 80-something% decline in serial killers from the 1970s to like anytime after the 90s. And most people think the reason there were so many serial killers is it's kind of crazy. Leaded gasoline, lead poisoning. Yeah, lead poisoning. Because if you look, there was like 600% more serial killers in the 70s. Like everyone you can think of, like Gacy, Dahmer was a little early 80s. Richard Ramirez, Son of Sam, like all of them were, in the 70s. And a lot of people think because that's what lead poisoning does. It makes you like violent.
Yeah. You guys talked about romanticizing the serial killer. John, you get a kick out of the story. In either 7th or 8th grade, you, me, and Bobby had to do a project on gangs. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember doing a project with you and Bobby. I don't remember being about gangs.
Yeah, it was on gangs, and ever since then, I've been like obsessed with the mafia and prison gangs and street violence and stuff. And I actually went to grad school before I got sick. I was aiming to go work in the State Department on cartels. That's where I wanted to go, and all because of a class in middle school.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Bobby
I have all
was
this
a great
here, man. I love reading about prison violence, gang violence, Mexican mafia, Brotherhood, Aryan Circle, all the black gangs. How I got a book I read called Narconomics, and the economics of selling drugs.
It's the 10 crack commandments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Amazing
Yep.
shit.
So the first 5 years of my practice, I was a criminal lawyer, and I speak Spanish, not as well as I should, but I do speak Spanish. And so I got a lot of Spanish criminal cases. So I had a lot of people involved in that stuff. And I'll tell you, none of them would ever talk. Like you always have to tell them, like, the police are saying if you'll give information, they'll keep you safe and they'll give you all this great deal. Wouldn't even think about it. And they would tell you why, and they would tell you, all the reasons. And it's scary stuff. I mean, it's in every state, and gangs are no joke. I mean, they're bad here in Winston now. I mean, gangs are bad.
It used to be. I mean, again, not like romanticize the mafia, but even Avon Barksdale, like never on a Sunday. There's kind of like a code. No wives, no kids, no civilians.
Yeah, no one not involved. Right.
The cartels stepped the game up, and now even basically a drive-by is just random shootings. Not like you walk up and kill somebody like Snoop or Omar or something,
Right. Well, I mean, all three of us knew people. I mean, we could all name people we all know who were connected, but back different. Like, I remember a good friend of mine who will remain nameless. I went to his wedding, and his uncle, who I spent like every 4th of July with, wasn't there. And I was like, where is he? And he's like, oh, he's started 5 years for a sawed-off shotgun charge. And I was like, oh, that's awful. He's like, no, it's great. He, beat the racketeering charge. And, these are people who like we knew and we liked and like are in our fantasy football leagues. I mean, like these are people like normal dudes. It's different now. And especially some of the foreign cartels. And I'll tell you, Mexican ones are bad, but the Russian ones are really bad.
Yeah.
Around here, Russian gangs they don't mess around.
I did a paper early on Los Zetas, like right after they left the cartel and became their own thing. And I remember reading a story about, I'm pretty sure it was El Chapo, who had like tigers on his property. And they would pick random people off the street to feed his tigers and like throw them in there. And like, best of luck, pal.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I heard the people loved him, like the people in his community. Like he was like some kind of Robin Hood type figure. That's
Well,
what I
if you
heard.
give them
I don't know.
something that's different. I mean, you're giving him money, you're giving more money than the government is protection. That's one thing. I'm saying not on the inside of his compound. He wasn't taking people from his neighborhood.
Right.
But he was putting people with his animals.
And the same was true for Pablo Escobar. If you ever want a really, really excellent book, and I know you'd love this, both of you probably, the guy who wrote Primary Colors, which may not be your favorite book, Joe Klein or whatever his name is, he wrote a book called Killing, and it's about the
What
hunt
was it
for
called,
Pablo
John?
Escobar. Killing Pablo. I read it when I worked in New York City and I had to ride the train every day in college. I read the book, and I know it was by the guy who wrote Primary Colors. It's fantastic. It's called Killing Pablo: The Hunt for Pablo Escobar. One of the best books you'll ever read. I think Joe Klein wrote that. If not, I may be mixing it up with Woody Guthrie: A Life, which is the other Joe Klein book, which is also amazing. But the book I know is called Killing Pablo: The Hunt for Pablo Escobar. It may not be Joe Klein. Joe Klein might be the Woody Guthrie book. But I definitely recommend it if you want to get an insight about how the CIA basically, after a year and a half, caught him. It's a fascinating book, like really, really interesting with pictures and everything else.
Yeah, he brought in hippos to his
Mhm.
property that weren't native to
Problem.
Colombia. And
Yeah,
now they're a problem. They're an invasive species, and they're too big to be on the water he had on his land. They need to go into the Amazon, which they're not supposed to be in.
Right.
I heard
Well, and
hippos
he
are
had.
nasty too.
Oh, they actually they kill more animals than any other mammal every year.
Yeah.
In hippos.
I heard they're
They're horrible.
vicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're aggressive. But no, the book
Hippos.
was crazy. He had like 140 houses, and that's how he evaded capture. Is he had all these houses, and so he would just leave. And at one point, he allowed himself to be arrested because he built the jail, and it was like a palace. And then one day he got sick of it because he found out they were going to actually try and put him in real jail. So he just walked out and escaped through a tunnel, and they caught him like 7 months later. But
A lot of the prisons in South America are kind of like that. Like,
Yeah.
the guys are serving time, but like their wives can come in during the day. There's kids there. There's like a market, and they still kind of like run the show, but they're in prison. There's a great movie with Mel Gibson. It's I think it's called Get the Gringo, or it's either Gringo or Get the Gringo. But it's he gets locked up down there, and it reminded me of some of the books and stuff that I had to read and write about how they have prison.
well, it's like they say that one prison in El Salvador that MS-13 just controls, and there's no guards because it's too dangerous.
Oh yeah, they got ones like that too. And now there's a newer one down in Venezuela, right? But now they have the guys all like super close together. Their like heads are down, like head to back all day.
That's Venezuela. Venezuela has a much stronger government than El Salvador, but yeah.
That's wild. By the way, John, you plugged, I think, 2 books so far. If you want, send me the link and I'll put them in the description later. So anybody who wants to check them out or read them can do so.
Yeah, I mean, they're amazing books. I mean, I obviously, I'm not selling books, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of books that you like, Woody Guthrie: A Life is one of the best books I've ever read, and so is The Hunt for Pablo Escobar. It's called. They're both fantastic. So I recommend them both, especially the Woody Guthrie book. That's a great book.
Yeah, I'll plug the links in the description if anybody's interested in purchasing the books, or maybe you can read them online, Kindle, whatever people are doing nowadays.
They're super old. Probably get them at the library.
There you go. The old pen and paper.
I use Kindle's great. I use a Kindle Unlimited. I think I use it more than Michelle. It's hers.
I do the audiobook thing work out, and when I'm driving to far locations.
Yeah, I don't drive enough. So, but when I do, I listen to podcasts or history or whatever. Like right now,
y'all live in big cities. You don't have to drive a lot. You don't have to drive an hour and a half to the podunk country like I do.
True. I kind of miss it though. I kind of miss driving around because I would listen to more stuff. I mean, I'm here all day, but now I started working 3 days a week. So,
how's that going? I don't want to flip the topics, but how's that?
It's cool, man. I like it a lot. I went to sub for high school, but I wasn't sure what I was doing on the system, so I picked 2 days, and I am in a K through 2 low functioning autistic room. I'm like a para professional. So
That's awesome.
and I can go back. I like it, man. It's fun. I mean, it's not fun, but it's like because of my wife and her profession. Like I went in like almost knowing what to do. I wasn't. The kids weren't awkward to me. You know, I loved it. I kind of was stuck with one kid all day, and it's cool. I like it. They need a lot of help, so they keep asking me to come back. I'll do it.
You know, that's a calling. It's a very rewarding thing to do, and not a lot of people can do it. So good for you, man. It's a hard thing to do.
I wanted to. So basically, when I graduated high school, like screwed around, went to county, blah 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 blah. Got a whole bunch of credits from county. Eventually, got my shit together. Went to Centenary. I wanted to go to Centenary to teach, and they can give you a 5-year master program there. But my first 2 years of county wouldn't have counted at all. I had to start over. So Centenary took all of my credits, even the ones that I didn't need to get my county degree. So I double majored at Centenary in U.S. history and poli sci, and I did a semester at American, and then I went into down to grad school before I got sick. But I wanted to teach originally, so to get my teaching cert in PA, you can sub and then take something to get in there eventually. But I'm like afraid to take the praxis. You know, I could probably do that, but I don't remember math at all.
Dude, you would kill the practice. You'd have to take some practice tests. You'd kill it.
Because I can go in and talk about history and civil, civics or whatever. I can talk about the Fed all day long.
You have to be careful what you say about the Fed in second and third grade, my friend.
Get them started early. Down with the Fed.
I'm trying to throw taxation as theft out there.
Hey, they cut rates 0.5% today, man.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. That's political.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's all political. The rates should be up. Real rates should be at like 10%.
They used to be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you want houses to be more expensive?
No, I don't. But you got to ride it out to kill all the money that Trump and then Biden trickled on top of the inflation.
I hear you, but tell the guy who's can't afford to rent his $800 a month apartment, who can't buy a house even though he's making $60,000 a year, that needs to ride out the don't spend too much money. Good luck with that.
Right. Okay. So you give the guy a loan now, and we still have the problem. The thing's still going to bust with too much cheap money out there.
You're not wrong, but I'm just saying, like,
it's just
for the individual, it doesn't matter to them, right? Because they want to. They don't care about 50 years from now the country's going to be bankrupt. They just want a house, right?
Yeah. It's the politicians want to give you something because it's always not going to hit until 4 years later, and you're either not going to be in that position, and it's the last guy's problem,
right?
Or you know what I mean? Yeah.
But try and sell that to the people who are voting who want a house.
You can't. Like you either get the little fix now, but the more trouble later, or a lot of trouble now to get better for everyone later. But we're at that point in history where
I don't disagree. But we have the time to, be on a podcast on Wednesday evening.
True.
Instead of working hours a day and trying to pay our apartment, right? So that's the problem. Is you're not wrong. You're right in terms of the large scale. You're right, but selling the person who is going to have to work 2 more shifts because the interest rate's 10% is a hard sell. Whether it's right or wrong, it's just a hard sell. I'm not giving a.
No, I agree with you.
I'm not saying one side's right or wrong. I'm just saying, like, good luck selling that. Now that we've moved into economic terms, an area which I am woefully ignorant compared to probably both of my hosts here.
You probably know more than I do, John. That's not my it's not my area of expertise. That's Billy's. So economics aside, I know you had a couple other topics, Jeff, that you wanted to ask John about. Do you want to move on to those, or would you guys like to stay with economics for a little bit longer?
Oh, I mean, I think if we should probably save those two for another show. We've been on for an hour. I bet we could talk about that for a long time. What do you think, John?
I'm up for whatever you'd like to talk to me about. I'm glad to just have a conversation with both of you. I enjoy it.
All right, cool. Then let's stay with let's just keep it with the normal stuff, and we'll save that. It's not mass shootings. What was the term for it, John, that you used? That when the father, we're holding the father responsible for the child's actions.
You're talking about okay, so yeah, it's not a mass shooting. It's either second degree murder or negligent homicide. The idea of vicarious liability is the term.
Vicarious liability. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
So are we doing this? Should I pull
It-
some of these articles up while John's speaking?
Please do.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Let's just get it.
Jeff just said he didn't
yeah.
want to go into it, and I guess we're going into it. Go ahead, John.
So vicarious liability is the concept of when in criminal or civil actions we can hold someone else responsible for something that a third person does. We see it sometimes in when people use someone else's gun, which is I think what we're talking about in terms of the mass shootings, which I think is a very scary sort of slippery slope. And then we also use it when a third party, for example, gets a bunch of drugs for someone and they overdose and die. And that's used much more common. So I don't know probably enough specific facts about this case, the Michigan school shooter. I know some. I know that he was investigated for posting stuff about school shooting, I think the year before. I know that his father was interviewed. I know that his father ended up buying him a gun anyway. And I know that there was some pretty significant warning signs that were not reported, at least allegedly. I only know what the media tells me, but that seems to be the reporting for most of the news. So the question is, when do we hold someone liable for when their child shoots up a school, right? And
or anything.
so
We talk about a school. What's the next step? You know, what I mean, you bought the kid a car.
Yeah. And you can be charged with this. Like if it's not a school shooting, you're not a parent. Like if you sell an illegal gun to someone who uses it to kill someone in a drive-through shooting, we've always charged you with a crime, like always. And
Really?
if you're close, we've charged you with felony murder, and no one sort of got up in arms about it because you were a bad guy for selling illegal guns, right? I mean, so there's some level where we just don't really care if you're part of the criminal element. The bigger question is, where does it spread to? Like, what if I don't sell you the gun, but I just don't lock it up enough? What if I, just don't report when you say I'm going to shoot my, teacher? I hate him. Like, I just don't like, I don't love the slippery slope. I think it's too easy to abuse, but at the same time, the question is there, it's kind of like the death penalty question, right? Like by all statistics, the death penalty does not deter murder. It just doesn't, right?
Correct.
People who murder people either don't believe they're going to get caught, are too crazy to care, or are in the heat of passion, right? So why do we do the death penalty? Because we want the public to believe we are deterring murder, not because it actually does it, but we want the public to think we're doing it. And then they like us, they think we're hard on crime. This
Correct.
kind of feels that way to me, right? Like, I don't believe that by charging a dad with letting his kid get a gun for a school shooting, dads like me or any other dads can be like, I better be extra careful to make sure my kid doesn't shoot up a school because, I don't want to get charged with my kid shooting. Like, no one ever believes their kid would do that. So it doesn't even make sense to deter it, right?
I was going to say.
It seems like the and I trend probably slightly more left than right, though I'm fairly centrist, but it seems like the equivalent of a liberal dog whistle. Like we have right-wing dog whistles to things like immigration and black people and eating cats. We have left-wing dog whistles, and it's things like this towards let's stop the guns. I'm going to stop the guns. I'm going to get rid of the guns. And I don't think any of it's particularly productive. I don't think the world's any safer by that dad going to jail for 10 years and spending the money to keep him incarcerated. And I don't think anyone else is not going to do it because of that. But
agree.
at the same time, I would not begrudge a family of someone who got killed in that shooting for suing him for letting his kids have the guns to try and put together their lives more for all their expenses and what they went through. That I think is fine. I just don't think it's the place to take his freedom. I think that there's other liability. That's just what I think.
So,
I
John,
think that's reasonable, very reasonable.
so in this article, right, it says that the Michigan school shooter's parents sentenced to 10 years in prison for not stopping a runaway train. How? So obviously, in this case, they seemingly got convicted.
All right, hold on. I know a little bit. I know a very small bit about this case, right? It was a handgun. It was the father's gun. The kid had it on him. He had written something on a math test or a piece of work that went into the teacher, and it said something bad. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but enough to call the parents in immediately. So the parents both came from work same day. The kid, they all talk, counselor, principal, whatever the rules are for that, and everybody determined that for the rest of the day it was going to be cool. And the later in the day, the kid did it. But it wasn't the Georgia one was the one with the father and the rifle. This one was a handgun. I believe the father didn't lock up.
Did they take the gun from him, or did they not
They didn't know he had it on him because he called it like he had a nickname for the gun. And when he's like, I have my Black Beauty or whatever, something weird like that.
So John, how, just generally speaking, obviously each case is going to be different based on the evidence. But generally speaking, how hard or easy is it to get a conviction like this? Is it something that's pretty difficult? Is it easy?
It's remarkably difficult. So in the criminal law, there's very few. So there's two elements of any criminal case. There's what's called mens rea, which is the mental element. And then there's the actus rea, which is the physical element, right? You have to have an intent and an act. So generally, you have to have an act. I murder someone, I rape someone, I shoot someone, I beat someone, I sell drugs. This is a different kind of crime, which is a crime for not acting. And for those of us who were raised in the 90s, it's like the last, Seinfeld episode, right? They went to jail for not helping that person they were making fun of or whatever. There's very few things in the law where you can be criminally prosecuted for not acting. We generally don't have a duty to act. The exception is you have a duty to act once you start a crime in progress. So if I start a plan to kidnap someone and I send the person out in the car, I now have an affirmative duty to stop them from kidnapping that person because I've created that duty, right? Like I set in motion the bad thing. It's now my obligation to stop it. I got to assume the theory here is when you negligently or recklessly give someone a gun who shouldn't have it, which may in and of itself be illegal, you then sort of get or obligate yourself to have the duty to stop that from happening. But that's a hard conviction, beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, I like to say this. I've actually had a bunch of jury trials lately, and I teach this in law school, and I tell people, if you think a jury is easy, remember it's unanimous. So I want you to do this as a social experiment. Find 12 people on the street you don't know. They don't want to be there. Tell them they have to be there. They have to listen to you. So tell them they have to go into a room even though they don't want to. They want to go to work. They want to make money. They want to do whatever they want to do, but they have to go to this room. And then tell them they have to unanimously decide what each and every one of them is going to have for lunch. Even better, they all have to have a salad. They all have to unanimously decide to have the same salad dressing. How long do you think it would take those 12 people to pick one salad dressing that they all get to eat? And that's nothing, right? That's salad dressing on a salad. Now you're talking about a jury trial where someone's freedom or life or money is at stake. That's why it's so hard to win anything in front of a jury. And, in a criminal case, it's especially hard. Now, realistically, unfortunately, most jurors believe that if you're charged with the crime, you're probably guilty. And if you assert your right not to testify in your own defense, you're almost certainly going to lose. I used to tell all my clients, unless they absolutely couldn't, take the stand. Jury wants to hear from you. Whatever the DA does to you, whatever, the jury wants to hear from you. If they don't hear from you, they assume you're guilty, even though the judge will tell them 10 times they can't. They do. But I think it's much harder, especially when you inject things like gun rights, right? Because you're going to have 6 people who are, more gun favorable. You're going to have 6 people who are not. How are you ever going to get a 12-person jury to agree? So I think that's a hard sell. I think that's probably a political prosecution for the benefit of whoever is prosecuting it. I don't know if it's a, tough on crime sheriff or a liberal governor or DA or whatever it is, but that's smacks of people got killed in a school in our town. We got to look like we're doing something. So I want to get reelected sheriff. That's what that looks like to me, or DA or whatever.
One of those feelings over facts laws. It makes you feel better, but if you think about it in the long run, what are you really doing?
And I think it's actually even more simple than that. I think it's very Ayn Randian, right? It's just self-interest. Like, you're the DA or the sheriff, you're in the public sphere, there's a school shooting in your town. I am not going to get reelected unless I do something about this. Like, I'm just not. We have a saying in the law, bad facts make bad laws. I had a case I can't talk about too much because we resolved it with confidentiality, but it was involving people who drove other people for money, and something that happened to one of the passengers of that. And we resolved it because people are afraid that bad facts, if it gets appealed, can make a bad law that can affect them in the long term, right? So the problem is when you have a school shooting and you have a bunch of people on a jury who are sad because all their friends and neighbors, people died, and it's all over the news, and they feel like they have to do something, and then they convict someone. Well, now you just made a standard for anyone, like you said, like someone takes my gun. I don't have a gun, but if someone took my gun and went to, Walmart and shot someone randomly, now I get second-degree murder. Like, it's scary when you create a precedent that applies to everyone. I don't like that. Generally, as an old school, previously criminal defense lawyer, I think that's a bad idea.
Before, when we were talking in the beginning of this conversation, we brought up drugs. So is it the person who sells you the drugs, the person who supplies drugs? Say, like, we all, hypothetically, I brought a package, the 3 of us did that package, and one of you 2 passed away. Would it be my fault?
You're guilty of secondary murder.
Even
if you provide the drugs and I voluntarily take too much, you're guilty of secondary murder under North Carolina law.
Okay.
That's wild. So even if if Billy brings the drugs and I keep doing too many and he's like, yo, dude, calm down, chill, and I don't listen to him and I overdose, he's still liable? That's crazy.
Yes, he could still be charged, although that would certainly be a mitigating factor if, like, he was trying not to give you more and you, like, stole them or whatever. But no, if he's just like, here's the drugs, and, like, you take too much fentanyl and it's like Pulp Fiction and, you overdose because you snort it instead of whatever. Yeah, he's guilty of secondary murder. And that's, no record. That's 25 years here in North Carolina.
That was fucking trippy.
Let me run a stupid situation by you that I saw on TV. It was a frat hazing, and they made the kid drink a whole bottle of soy sauce, like a big one. And the kid had some medical reaction that nobody knew he was going to have if he drank too much sodium. And say the kid died, what would happen?
That's probably more along the lines of, at best, voluntary manslaughter. Because, if you give someone a substance that if you take too much, it'll kill you, like heroin or whatever it is, we consider that reckless indifference to the rights of others or the life of others. That's the malice standard. I think if it's something as innocuous as soy sauce, or like those DJs who had the water drinking challenge and then the woman died, she drank too much water. Remember that? I think at that point, I'm sorry?
I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, it was maybe 10 years ago. There was a contest who could hold your wee longer is what they called it, and they all had to drink, go to the bathroom. And I actually had a client who died of this in jail actually. But if you drink too much water, you actually can die of water intoxication. Like it lowers your electrolytes so much that it kills you.
Wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, the point is, if it's something that you reasonably wouldn't expect would kill someone, but it's really just negligent, right? You just like screw up. That's more along the lines of either negligent homicide or voluntary manslaughter, which is much less serious than second-degree murder.
Okay.
And obviously, it sounds like you'd be much more likely to get off on the charges if it was an accident.
What they would probably do, especially if it was the first time, if they would let you plead guilty with a probationary sentence to a very low level felony, and you would do it happily because you don't want to go to prison, and there's always a risk that someone decides you're an idiot for giving someone that much hot sauce or soy sauce or whatever it is.
Right.
But no, water intoxication. I had a case. It was a case against the state of North Carolina where the guy was exhibiting all kinds of crazy symptoms. He was having some psychotic episodes he had previously. He was in prison, and he was flooding the cell. He was stopping up the sink, and they mopped it, and they weren't paying attention to him. And he drank so much water, and they didn't do anything about it, that it killed him. And it's a very real thing. Water intoxication can kill you. It's actually not uncommon that someone who is psychologically disturbed keeps drinking water until they die or are seriously injured.
No shit. Now, did the guards get in trouble for that?
I mean, they weren't charged with crimes, and they
Okay.
weren't. But I mean, the state of North Carolina had to pay damages because it was very clear. He was yelling for help, and that like they literally saw it. They didn't cut off the water; they just mopped it and were like, "He'll be fine." And then after they called for help, they finally did call for help. The nurses said they were too busy, and they had other thing to worry about if he's just drinking water. And they didn't come for 45 minutes, and by then he was dead. He was brain dead by then. But
I'm surprised you didn't know that, Billy. Because I don't know if you remember, but we had an episode years, like probably 20 years ago, where nobody died, fortunately, but somebody did overdose on water. I don't want to tell it, but maybe I'll tell you.
Was I there?
What?
Was I there?
Yeah, you were there.
But I was drinking back then.
Yeah.
You gotta remind me.
I'll tell you the story later. Because I don't know if I should share it on air. But
no, we'll share it later. The DJ, if John's story is true, and that was only 10 years ago, I was definitely way too drunk to remember.
No, our story is about 20 years ago. But
I know.
I'll tell you.
No, it's very true for anyone who's actually listening. You can only drink it takes about 1.5 gallons of water within 2 hours to kill you.
If you're not
It's about it.
Yeah, if you're not
peeing.
Yes. Releasing it,
Matter.
so to speak.
Oh no, it doesn't matter. It takes
Really?
about if you drink 1.5 gallons, you're probably gonna vomit it up. And that's the thing he kept doing, is he kept throwing it up and then keep drinking. But if you drink 1.5 gallons of water, it doesn't matter if you're peeing or otherwise. If you don't throw it up, you'll die, unless they get you help immediately, because it lowers the potassium level in your body and the electrolyte level, so that you basically have a stroke.
Yeah,
Kill.
you have what's called the potassium sodium balance in your body, and yeah, if those two levels, potassium and sodium, drop too far, then yeah, you will have some serious issues, like John said. But I mean, I didn't know that that it didn't matter if you urinate, only because I've been living in very hot climates for the last 20 something years or whatever it is, and yeah, there are times where I drink really close to 1 gallon of water inside of an hour or two. If I was just on the soccer field, it's 97 degrees outside, it's 98% humidity, I will come home and pound almost 1 gallon of water, or somewhere close to that.
Do you have a medical or a biological background? It sounds like you do.
I was in nursing school for a while, so I don't have any degrees in any kind of biology. I just have information about it.
I can tell your experience. I will just say that's what our expert said, whether he's right or wrong. But when we were hiking in Philmont this summer in Arizona, we could do about 2 to 3 liters with extreme exertion, maybe 4 an hour. But peeing does help. It's just your body can only eliminate so much because it has to go through the kidneys and everything else. But what'll normally happen is you'll throw up. If you drink too much water, normally your body will make you throw it up. Or it's different if you're sweating, right? Like your example was different in the sense that if you're losing fluids, that's different, right? So I think this example is if you're just drinking water without
Normally, yeah. I think in my cases, to be fair, I think you're right. When I got home, I was probably severely dehydrated, after just sweating and doing all this exercising and running around. So it probably didn't affect me that way. But
do you remember when I went to the hospital right before the Steelers-Ravens playoff game in Pittsburgh?
No, you went to the hospital?
All right. Anyway, so back when we worked at John, remember Kieran's Pub turned into Mount Olive Bar and Grill in Flanders? So
you cut out what turned into what?
Kieran's Pub in Flanders turned into Mount Olive Bar and Grill.
Right. Yeah.
So I worked there for a minute. I hung out there all the time, but I was friendly with one of the owner's friends, and he worked at CBS, like a daytime producer for the morning shows. Fox had the Super Bowl that year, but he's like, I'll take you guys to the NFC Championship game as long as it's close. Anyway, I ended up being in Pittsburgh. I got really sick like 3 days before, and I was in Morristown Memorial, and they had to do one of those things that men get when they're 40, but I wasn't 40 at the time. And they brought me this like 2-gallon thing of yellow Gatorade looking stuff. And she's like, you need to drink it in, 2 hours. And I'm pounding it, trying to pound it. I start throwing it up. The nurse comes in. I'm like, hey, I can't keep it down. She's like, oh, they forgot to give you the pill. Gives me the pill. And I drank, was one of those big Poland Spring, like 2-gallon things, but, didn't stay in me very long.
Well, it might have also had different things in it.
Oh, true. It was yellow and nasty.
You can drink a lot more liquid that has certain electrolytes and other things in it. The problem is that the water washes out all your natural potassium and electrolytes. If you were drinking like 2 gallons of coconut water, you'd probably get sick, but it wouldn't wash out all your potassium. So it was probably something like that.
Yeah, it was probably because it came right out the other end for hours.
I think Ravens won the Super Bowl.
It is the year that Willis McGahee, he got rocked in the play. It was the NFC Championship game. It was in Pittsburgh. It was Steelers-Ravens. AFC.
Was it the year the Ravens won with Roethlisberger, or was it the year that the Steelers won? Because I only ask because my son was born the year the Steelers won in 2012. I mean, the Ravens. And I don't know what year you were talking about.
No, it can't be 2012 because 2012 I was it was before that because I got sick when I was living in Hopatcong. So that was like 2000. Oh shit, maybe it was 2012.
Yeah, that's the year my young born because we were in the hospital. I remember we had a Ravens balloon for like 4 months.
Oh no, it can't be because I moved into the condo in 2009 and I lived in Randolph or Hopatcong before that. So it was probably like 2006 or 7.
Well, so that was probably the Steelers. That was probably the Hines Ward, Jerome bust the Steelers when they won everything. But I'm sorry to hear you went through so many health challenges. I know you do that great foundation for liver transplants and everything. I'm sorry you have to deal with all that.
Sorry, I had Paul. You remember when I had hydrocele-testis?
Oh, how could I forget? You reminded me every other day. I get a picture of
a man's
stuff.
A man's testicles has 2 cells around it. One's called the hydrocele, and one's called something else. So my hydrocele was retaining water. So my left nut was literally the size of a pear.
I was going to say tennis ball or baseball, but yeah, it's accurate.
Yeah,
you're just telling your balls than everyone else. I hear you.
Oh no, it's back to normal now. Now it's all nice and tiny.
Totally joking, Jeff.
Yeah.
He would actually send like text messages, no warning, no nothing. And back then you just got the picture. It wasn't like there was nothing. Like you just look at it, and this image is now burned in my brain. And he would just send pictures to all of us. Whether you want to see it or not.
Before it was cool to send a dick pic, right?
It didn't hurt. It was just big, and like people were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "You'll never believe me." They're like, "I don't believe you." I'm like, oh, "You're gonna believe me."
And then we just
That's awesome.
send.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And then
can't be the
was-
only one. Some of the other crew members must have got him too. But I would say I get maybe about a picture a week or so, just
I was-
against my will.
I was out of
Yeah.
commission for like a month and a half.
We were texting back then. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was on the couch for a good month and a half. It sucked. It really
Well,
sucked.
hell, it might have been too. My back would have hurt trying to get up with that thing.
I had to
It looked
do
painful.
after surgery. I had to wear like a I ended up just wearing like tighty whities because I had to keep everything like two
From
sizes.
not
too
moving?
small. Yeah, man. Like even going to the bathroom, I was awful. Fucking
And I
awful.
don't mean to make light of it at all, Jeff. It's just.
Oh, I
yeah,
do. I do.
Well, he was joking around about what was going on.
Yeah.
You have the right to. I do not.
And then
Yeah,
I
it
got,
just for the audience, just to be fair, we
Tommy
didn't.
John.
What's that?
I call it Tommy John. I forget what it is, but
Just to be fair, the audience who may not, I didn't see anything else. He none of that wound up in the picture. Just the tennis ball, if you know what I
yeah.
mean.
Well, I remember this is back when cell phones were still kind of shitty, so it's nothing that I can't lie myself out of nowadays.
Yeah.
It's okay, Jeff. With your post on Facebook, you're not running for any office soon.
You know, I think even if I was, I can defend every single one of them. Because if it's before a certain date, I was drunk. And
yeah,
then
you could. There was a
yeah.
break.
It's a good thing you weren't on Facebook back then, or that picture probably winds up on Facebook, and now everybody can see. it.
This is like before MySpace.
Yeah, it was early on, but you
So
know,
if,
Billy wasn't shy back then. He still is not shy. So
Yeah, any Facebook post after 2018 is sober. Every Facebook post before that is drunk.
I'm proud of all people who get over things like that. You know, big shout out to our friend Jimmy Vosick for getting over it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
always
man.
always very encouraging to see people who went through real struggles, who we all worried about, and made it work. It's a hard thing to do. You're stronger people than I am. So
yeah, shout out to Jim and all of those people.
Yeah, man.
So to flip
I got lucky.
what's that?
I got real lucky.
Yeah, and you had a really good sense of humor about it when all that was going on. Not the ladder thing, but the tennis ball thing. You know.
Oh yeah.
So all right. So on that note, I think we had
What
one
about,
more.
Yeah. What about Trump almost getting whacked again?
Yeah, I feel like we should talk about that for maybe a minute or two. We did have one other video. I don't know if you want to show it to John about
Which one is it?
sure.
about the feds showing up at that guy's house. Because I am kind of curious if that's like, what the heck is that about?
John, did you see it? I posted it.
Is it P Diddy or which one?
No.
It's, you just play it, Paul.
Let me play. It's about 2.5 minutes long. I'm gonna play it so you guys can see it.
Yeah.
I
If
do
Jeff
want.
posted it, I'll look at it again.
I do want to give some context. I'm not really sure what this guy tweeted. I will try to find it later and insert it into the video. But I think it was something along the lines of like him insinuating that like somebody assassinate Harris and Biden. I don't know that that's true, but it was something like that. But
That's not
still,
gonna go well for you if you post.
yeah.
Yeah.
But even with that, is this legal? Is this okay? I'm gonna play it.
Hey, how can I
Well,
help
it's
you?
legal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you?
Who are you?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Can you give your full name, please?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Is that sufficient to identify as the only one O'Donnell affiliated with the FBI?
In New Hampshire, yes.
So
Could you please state your
First
full
step.
name, sir?
have to identify
Please stop
themselves.
recording.
No. It's First Amendment right.
I'm sorry, John.
Right to record. I said, so first of all, you don't have the right to ask the police officer's full name. They do have to show you a badge or some identifying information, but he also does have the right to record, but they can ask him not to. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, Paul, let's play it out because I have a whole bunch of questions.
I know
can
John started
ask.
talking. I wanted to get what he was saying. All right, I'm
My
gonna start.
fault.
You're good.
What's your name, sir? Absolutely not. You can show me your name and identification, or I'm going to go back inside my house.
Okay. I don't really want to broadcast my.
Oh, this is going out right after you guys walk away.
So that's why I'm not going to.
So you can show me your name or ID. You can walk away.
We just want to talk to you.
I'm not going to talk to people who claim to be federal agents unless they can show me identification.
Okay, well, you see our badges.
I need to see. Is your full name on that badge?
No.
I'd like to see something with your full name, or I'm not going to talk to you.
I prefer you not to broadcast it.
This will be going online as soon as you walk away.
Well, all I want to do is talk to you about a post that was made, and if you
Well,
happen to be the one that made the
I want to talk to you about you guys coming here. Say you make a salary of, I don't know what, low 100K? You guys making six figures? Factor in 50% expenses, overhead, maybe 100% expenses. Talking about burning a couple $100 an hour just here, let alone all the time you guys are spending to investigate something that you know is not against the law, right? Like you're familiar with. So then why would you come?
Because we wanted to make sure that there weren't any.
No, you're coming because you're part of a regime that does this kind of thing when you know laws aren't being broken, and that's an embarrassment, man. Didn't you guys read the Constitution? Do you not believe in America? Like, how do you do your jobs and go home?
We appreciate it.
You're walking
All right,
away.
Paul.
Because nothing we did is against the law, and you guys are fuckheads that try to act like bullies. And I hope you go home and are embarrassed. You can't even say your name on camera because you know that what you're doing is embarrassing. You know Americans that believe in the Constitution think you're laughable. And you go home and you think about what you did today. Go home and think about it, you cowards.
I'm gonna kill it there.
All right. First,
They
before John gets into it, there's one thing that I don't mind when people record the police. There's other kinds of those people. They're like, they're almost doing it on purpose, or they'll go and film like in front of a police station. Like, I'm on a curb. Why can't I film here? You know what I mean? It's different if you catch a cop doing some bullshit, but you're still being a normal human being. When you're purposefully fucking with them like this guy is, you know what I mean? Like, it almost makes him look like more of a dick than the FBI agents.
Yeah, this guy's just an asshole. I mean, honestly, like you have the right to. So, I mean, you have the right to film officers. Fine. There's a very good reason why the officers don't want to give their full names and badge numbers on a video that's going to go out on social media to everyone, so they can be, harassed, targeted, everything else. You do have the you actually only have the obligation to identify yourself if you're actually in the commission of something that violates his rights. So if they're arresting him, if they're, having a search warrant, if they're charging with a crime, police are allowed to talk to people and ask them, like, what's going on, dude? Why'd you post this? Is there something going on? Or anything going on? Like that, isn't that what we just said about that school shooting? Like, we wish someone had followed up and said, like, are you okay? What's going on here? Like,
What
they
about
weren't really wrong.
Do they have to show you if you're like, am I being detained? And they say yes. Do they have to show your ID then?
They do not have to show you an ID if you're being detained lawfully. Although if you resist an arrest and claim that you had reason to believe they were not a law enforcement officer, that may be a defense. Now, that's really only going to hold water if they're like an undercover random person claiming to arrest you. Person pulls up in a squad car with a government issued plate and pulls you over and has like trooper whatever on their vest and doesn't give you their full name and arrests you. You're not going to get out of it because they didn't tell you their full name was Michael whatever, right? But no, it is a defense, and I've seen that case does exist where someone was undercover, issued a command or tried to restrain someone, and someone said, I didn't know it was a cop, so I ran away, or I hit them, or I hurt them.
Right.
So, but there's no like statute that says you have to identify yourself. Now, there's a lot of police procedures in different police organizations that require them to do that. But that's kind of an internal rule. But you're always allowed to record the police in a public place. You may not be allowed to do it if it's a place that has certain restrictions for security reasons. Like, you're not allowed to record Secret Service at a presidential speech or at the White House, that's illegal. And probably for very good reasons, right? For, terrorism and everything else.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think the guy was just kind of a dick. Like, he was coming, they just wanted to come and be like, hey, I mean, the way they're looking at it is like, some boss told us we have to check on your dumbass post where you said you're going to shoot someone. We're just trying to have a conversation with you, and you're basically calling us fascist Nazis. Like, okay, have a nice day, goodbye. Like, I didn't see anything that was particularly wrong. I think he was just kind of a jerk.
My other question about the ID thing, when the one cop was like, my badge is enough, is that true?
It's not. I mean, there's no rule that they have to show you a badge to arrest you for violating the law. Like, so the example I want to give is like this. Like, let's say you're on the street, you get mad at your girlfriend, and you punch her in the face as hard as you can. And she's laying there bleeding, and a cop sees you and says, you're under arrest for assault. You really think you're allowed to be like, show me your badge and give me your full name before you put me in handcuffs? No, of course not. Right? Like, of course not the law. And people think that because it's like a traffic stop or an interrogation, there's some like different rule. Look, he could have just been like, I'm not talking to you guys, and went in his house. And there's nothing they could have done about it. Like, he didn't have to engage and be like, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. He could have just been like, I don't talk to you at all. I have the right to remain silent. Bye. Get off my land. Right. And like, if it's a traffic stop, you have to do certain things. Like, you have to identify yourself. You have to give your license registration. And if the officer asks you to get out of the car, you've got to get out of the car for officer safety. Those are things you have to do. There's no like, I only have to do it if they give me their name or anything. You have to do those things.
That was Tyreek Hill recently.
Right. Now, if you don't do those things, maybe it's a defense if it's like a dark area and they're a plainclothes cop and you weren't sure they were a cop. That might be a defense. But that doesn't, mean there's any special rule that the cop that pulls me over has to tell me his name before I have to get out of the car and give him my license.
So, John, you mentioned like he doesn't have to show the badge. Is that what you said? And
well, not yes, because I'm just trying to talk to the guy.
So again, if I haven't actually committed a crime and I have a cop or a person who claims to be an officer but doesn't have to show me their badge, how do I know you're actually an officer? Say it's an undercover person or one of the feds like these guys are.
Necessarily, but you also don't have to stop, right? You don't have to comply with any of their commands at that point. Like, the exception is when you're driving a car, because there's special rules when you're driving a car and using the highways, etc. But if you're just walking on the street and some dude says, I'm a cop, give me your name, you don't have to do anything.
So
I got a good one for you. There's a video that went viral. It's older. It's an older dude. Not an older dude. He looks like a Vietnam vet kind of guy. Walking down the street, he's got his folding blind man cane in his back pocket. And a uniformed officer pulls him over. And she's like, what's in your back pocket? And he's like, what are you?
Him over walking?
She was in a squad car.
And he was walking?
He's walking down the street. She rolls up on him because she saw the stick in his back pocket and thought he had a weapon or something. And then it gets all crazy and they violate his rights and shit. But I just remember that because the dude's just walking and she rolls up like, is that a weapon? He's like, what are you, a tyrant? And then she got all mad. And
so there's three different standards in the criminal law. To stop and detain briefly, it's a reasonable articulable suspicion of criminal activity. Reasonable articulable suspicion. To arrest, you need probable cause that a criminal violation has occurred. And to convict, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Those are the three standards. So theoretically, if I see someone with what looks like a concealed weapon in their pocket, and I'm a law enforcement officer, it is illegal to carry a concealed weapon without a carrying concealed permit. And people think that's just a gun. It's not, right? You're not allowed to carry any concealed weapon. People think it's a gun. It's not, right? Oh, I got feedback. So like,
I don't know what just happened there. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But like, so if I see someone who's walking around and he's got, a samurai sword, like those really cool ones behind you there, in their robe or their, edgelord pants or whatever they are, and I see just like the top of the handle poking out, and I'm a cop, I can say, hold on, dude, what do you got there? And that's probably a reasonable articulable suspicion to stop and investigate. At that point, if they had a reasonable articulable suspicion to stop and investigate, you must obey all lawful commands. So at that point, the lawful command to identify yourself and show me what you have is legal. However, if showing you what you have would essentially make you guilty of a crime, you cannot say anything and refuse, and then they can determine if there's probable cause to arrest you. Like, you're not required to pull the drugs out. Like, if someone says, is that a bag of weed in your pocket, and they haven't seen it, you don't have to be like, yes, right? They need probable cause to search you and find said weed, right? Okay. So I think the answer is he would have to do the bare minimum of identify himself. He doesn't have to, you do have to identify yourself. He might have to produce an identification. He does not have to answer any questions, and he certainly doesn't have to pull anything out of his pocket. But
I think if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, if he starts getting aggressive, it's different, because that might be a different crime called resisting arrest or obstructing and delaying, whatever.
If I remember correctly, she pulls up, she stops him. It's not, I mean, it's half concealed. It's a folded up blind person cane. It's like a white pole, you know what I mean? So it's half hanging out of his pocket, but it's not like hidden by his shirt. And she's like, I wanted to check. And then he's like, it's a walking cane. Is that against the law? And as soon as she went with the what's your name, it's I don't have to tell you my name. I'm just, and that's where it starts to escalate to another cop coming and whatever. But yeah, she saw right away that it wasn't a weapon.
What's this in your back pocket? I just saw you walking it.
It's a navigational aid. What's the problem? You a tyrant?
Shocking body camera video shows deputies arrest a legally blind man walking back from jury duty with a walking stick.
What's your name and date of birth?
I don't have to give that unless
Yes, sir. I was investigating.
You have reasonable.
Do you want me to put you in handcuffs right now? Yes, sir, I do.
It happened on October 31st in Columbia County, Florida. Body camera video shows deputies interacting with 61-year-old James Hodges, who is carrying a walking stick in his back pocket. According to the video, responding deputies at first believed it was a gun.
What is your suspicion?
It looks like you're carrying a gun in your back pocket. I'm stopping to make sure you're carrying it properly.
You don't have you ensured that it's not a firearm?
No, you keep turning so I can't see it. You don't have to be a to me.
Well, you're being one to me.
Video shows Hodges refusing to give out his name, date of birth, or ID card. He then calls for the responding deputy's supervisor.
No, sir, I'm doing my job.
Am I detained?
Yeah, you are. What's your name and date of birth?
It does not matter.
Yes, sir, it does.
Do you have a crime?
Would you like me
Call
to
your
put you in?
supervisor,
He's right
please.
here.
The supervising deputy again asks for Hodges' ID, but he refuses.
What's she stopping for? For a walking stick. And it could look like a weapon. She asked you to present it, okay? Now she's asking me for ID. Okay. I don't need the ID unless there's reasonable articulated suspicion that I have committed a crime, am committing a crime, or about to do a crime. Sir, and her suspicion was that you were armed, okay? And she's asking you for your ID. Well, now she has verified that I am not armed. Okay. So there is no problem. You have your ID or not? I do have my ID, but you don't need it.
After that, Hodges is handcuffed. That's when Hodges confirms that he is legally blind and carries the navigational aid to help him when walking. He also tells deputies he was stopped while walking back from jury duty.
Sir, are you legally blind? Yes, I am. Okay. I had to walk up here in the dark for jury duty, which was canceled. Why aren't you using your stick? You don't have to use your stick all the time? Not all the time.
After Hodges' ID card is retrieved, the supervising officer orders he be taken into custody for resisting an officer and obstruction.
All right, Mr. Hodges. Was that hard?
It's going to be. I want your name and your badge number. No, I put him in jail for resisting.
Okay. All right, let's go.
I want your name and badge number too, sir.
Hodges is then placed in the back of a squad car.
You want to pull this out of my back pocket?
Sure. Here, I'll grab your jacket for you, too.
The Columbia County Sheriff's Office released a statement saying Sheriff Mark Hunter is, quote, troubled by what he has seen in the video and the matter is being addressed. An administrative investigation into the incident began on November 3rd, when officials say they were made aware of the situation. The statement also reads in part, quote, if policy violations are sustained at the conclusion of that investigation, appropriate action will be taken.
What I always tell people, or I used to when I did criminal law, is you can ask a police officer, am I being detained? Because the standard changes as soon as you're detained. Once you're detained, they need probable cause. If they're just investigating, it's reasonable suspicion, which is a much lower standard. So I always tell people, am I being detained? And if they say, no, we just want to talk to you, walk away. And if they try and stop you, put handcuffs on you, or prevent you from leaving, you're being detained. So at that point, all of your rights attach, and it's a much harder scenario for them.
Okay.
That's always the answer is cooperate. Here's my name. Here's my identification. You don't have to answer anything further. Although realistically, if you're not doing anything wrong, you catch more flies with honey than, vinegar, right? Don't be a dick to a cop for the sake of being a dick to a cop, because a lot of cops become cops because they like having power trips. Not all of them. Most of them are good, but a lot of them are ones who aren't.
Yeah, you're going to set those people off.
Right. Sometimes it's just as simple to be like, here's my name, here's my identification. I would prefer not to answer any other questions. Am I being detained? If not, I'd like to leave. And if they say, no, you're free to leave, then just leave. Like, don't make a big deal out of it. Just leave. And if they say no, well, if they say something like they don't answer, you can just say like, well, I'd like to ask you a few more questions. Just say something like, I'm assuming I'm free to leave because you haven't told me I'm not, and then leave.
Gotcha.
And then if they stop you, well, then don't resist, but be like, okay, now I'm not saying anything because now you're being detained. Now they have to have probable cause because they have to have probable cause to detain you. So if they did not have probable cause to stop you from walking away, anything that happens for the rest of that interaction is not admissible. That's the whole fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, right? As soon as they unlawfully detain you, they're done.
I have another question, John, pertaining to vehicles. So, do you have to pull over for an unmarked car? Like, obviously cop cars, they have, the side of the car says whatever, town, district, city they work for. But obviously sometimes they're unmarked, like in this case with these guys' cars. Do you have to pull over for that?
If they display a siren, and yes, I mean, if they display an emergency signal, I think you do have to pull over. However, if you then determine a reason to believe that they're not in fact law enforcement officers and you leave and you're wrong, I think that would be a defense.
But like, you used to be able to buy them at Spencer's in the mall. Remember the sirens? Anybody could put that on their car.
I know, and that's a crime too. But I think as a society, they kind of decided that not giving every criminal a pass to say I didn't know if it was a real cop was more likely than random person buying at Spencer's pulling people over. And that's also why they make impersonating a police officer a remarkably serious felony. Like remarkably more serious than you would think it should be for what they're actually doing.
Now that would be like me, Dave Chappelle the comedian, walking around the streets in a cop uniform. Somebody might run up on me. Oh, thank God. Officer, help us. Come on, they're over here. Help us. I'm like, oh, just because I'm dressed this way does not make me a police officer.
So the answer is legally, I think the answer is yes. Now, and if it's an unmarked vehicle and you have questions, I've seen this happen. You can call 911 and be like, I have a person behind me trying to pull me over who is saying he's a police officer. I'm not pulling over until you confirm for me this is a police officer. And don't drive fast, drive slow, keep going. And then they'll often be like, yes, that's unit, blah, blah, blah. You need to pull over. And if they say it's not, I think you'd have a heck of a defense. So there's nothing wrong with picking up the phone and calling 911 if you don't believe the person behind you is actually a police officer. And that's not illegal. That would not be resisting arrest or fleeing to elude if you didn't like speed off or anything. And if the cop stopped you afterwards, you can say, hey, look, I just called 911 because I don't know if you're a real cop. You can confirm with them I just called 911 and you'd probably be in no trouble for it.
Interesting. I haven't had that happen. Just curious.
It's more commonly done with females than it is with men. And I can understand road in the middle of nowhere, especially here in North Carolina on country road, and you have someone behind you and don't know who they are, and they're trying to pull you over in a dark car. I think it's eminently reasonable to call 911 and be like, there's a car behind me, here's where I am. You can track my phone. Is there a law enforcement officer behind me? I think that's very reasonable.
It makes sense. All right, guys. You guys got anything else for today?
No, I think it's a good amount of time.
John, I really enjoy you for asking me back on. It's always fun to talk to you both.
Yeah, I think I'll invite you again, man. This is I enjoy these conversations. This is good stuff.
Yeah, thank you again.
I'll make it half the time.
All right.
Yeah, thanks again, John, for coming back on. Appreciate you and all of your insight.
All right, take care.
Fight the good fight. Take care.
All right, brother.
Later, guys.
What the fuck is this, man?
Freeze, motherfucker! Hand! Let me see your hands. Get out of the car. Get the fucking car. Oh, get out. Need some fucking dirt.